How those proposed cuts to the federal budget might impact you are top of mind as we watch the work of Congress. Our District 2 Representative, Republican Derek Schmidt, is here to give us his perspective today, and welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Good to be back.
I know that you applauded the House passage of this bill, but I do want to ask you about the concerns that have been raised. Top among them that hundreds, if not thousands of Kansans could lose health care through Medicaid, that hundreds, if not thousands of Kansans could lose food assistance benefits. How do you respond to those concerns? Is that going to happen, or is something being misunderstood?
Well, I think first of all, you got to remember where we are in the process. I mean, there is this rare moment we can use a tool called reconciliation. It's what the president likes to call one big beautiful bill, but the more technical term is it's a reconciliation bill that you can make changes in tax policy and you can make changes in what they call mandatory spending, which is the automatic spending programs, including some of the publicly funded health care programs. You only get to use that tool on very rare occasions, but it's important because it's a tool that avoids the filibuster in the Senate. Otherwise, everything runs into a 60-vote wall in the Senate and you can't get things done. So when we talk about the need to try to start to bend down the curve of this explosion in federal spending that we've seen over the last generation and certainly since the start of COVID, the only way to do that is to use the reconciliation tool. So that's the context in which the discussion is happening. In terms of what's in there, I mean, we have the tax cuts extenders that kind of continue what's been in place since 2017. We have the other pieces that the president campaigned on, no tax on tips and no tax on overtime and some of those other pieces. We also have some of the changes on the mandatory spending side. And the only piece of mandatory spending that's touched in terms of the big programs is the Medicaid piece. What we've really pushed on from a Kansas standpoint, and by we, I mean those of us in the Kansas delegation working on trying to get support for this thing, is to make sure that those changes have the minimum possible impact on folks in Kansas, and I believe they will. So for example, on the Medicaid piece, the changes that are in the bill as it left the House, and there's still a long way to go, the Senate's got to deal with all of this as well. The changes deal with work requirement for able-bodied adults who are able to work, don't have dependent children, are not disabled, are not elderly or in a nursing home, but they qualify for Medicaid almost always under the expansion population. Well, we don't have that in Kansas because Kansas chose not to expand Medicaid to that population. So that piece doesn't have a substantial impact in Kansas. Likewise, there are some changes on the eligibility checks. At the start of COVID, normally, routinely, people would come on and off the Medicaid program. That happens all the time, has since we've had the start of the program. And at the start of COVID, they put a pause on that. They said nobody rolls off for right now. Well, they've restarted the rolling off and the eligibility checks. No changes in eligibility, just restarts of the eligibility checks. But some states have not been as diligent as Kansas has in actually enforcing that. So there's still a lot of people on the rolls in some states, mostly other states, who aren't supposed to be there, not because of anything we've done, but because that's been the law. So those are the types of changes we tried to make. A lot of people call them fraud, waste, and abuse.
Well, and people might accept part of that, but what about those who are kind of caught in the middle? And especially when you talk about food assistance, because certainly, and you might say, well, the food pantries can keep up with that, whoever might fall through the cracks, but they're already stressed to the limit. Yeah. So will people lose food assistance benefits? So
that's a different issue. There's the Medicaid piece, there's the SNAP piece, which is the food assistance piece. In terms of the food assistance piece, Congressman Mann's really been our lead on that in Kansas because he sits on the Agriculture Committee that worked on that piece of the legislation. But my understanding on that is that the focus is really on trying to make sure that some sort of expanded eligibility pieces that were supposed to have rolled back have rolled back, and that states are doing a diligent job in enforcing the eligibility requirements for the SNAP program.
So it's back to the fraud and abuse again.
That's the concept.
Before we run out of time, I do want to ask your thoughts on the situation that's happening with international students at our colleges and universities. Do you feel international students have a place in the U.S., and how concerned should the schools be who are sitting out there, or the students who are sitting out there right now, hearing about these pauses, hearing about these blocks, hearing about some of them being revoked? How concerned should they be, and what place do international students have in the U.S.?
Well, I think international students are very important to our colleges and universities and to our communities in the United States. Certainly here in Topeka, where we're sitting right now, we have, Washburn's a terrific institution. We're just down the road from KU and K-State, big international student presences, and we want to continue that. They really enrich our universities. The administration has sort of painted with a broad brush on international students right now. What I hope they will do, as they often do, is start very strong, very broad, and then sort of fashion a more tailored approach. There are problems in some parts of the country, particularly with some of the universities that have not been, shall we say, particularly stringent in screening who from, for example, mainland China has come into our country. You want to be very careful on who you're granting access to if it's from a country that is adverse to the United States. But right now, this sort of broad brush approach, I hope, gets really tailored back.
And we'll see how quickly that happens, because this is one that does have a ticking clock.
Absolutely.
School starts in the fall.
Yeah.
Congressman Derek Schmidt, appreciate you being
Thanks,
here.
Melissa. Appreciate it.
We're going to look at